Community members gathered at the Barrie City Hall rotunda for Take Back the Night, an international protest march aimed at ending sexual violence against women, girls, and gender diverse people. The event was part of a global movement held annually. Organized locally by Huronia Transition Homes, the march was supported by several regional organizations, including the Gilbert Centre and the Elizabeth Fry Society. Attendees marched through downtown Barrie to reclaim public spaces that are often unsafe for marginalized communities. MacDonald, Executive Director of Huronia Transition Homes, spoke to Simcoe Community Media about the importance of the event and 24/7 crisis support services provided throughout Simcoe County.
If anybody needs support, if anybody has survived violence or has experienced gender-based violence, we have a 24/7 crisis line available to take your call. We are here for you. And so we have the countywide sexual assault center available to you. There are multiple organizations that were here today. We have different women's shelters that are available. The Gilbert Centre provides different supports as well. The Elizabeth Fry Society as well provides supports. So I would recommend to folks to really look at 211, and then there's an area for abuse services, and all of that information comes up there.
Sarah Tilley, Harm Reduction Program Manager at the Gilbert Centre, emphasized the need to address the specific harms faced by trans communities, particularly trans women and trans people of color.
If we're serious about ending sexual violence, we must be serious about ending the violence of control, the policing of gender, of sexuality, and of identity. Because consent and autonomy are not just about sex, they're about life. They're about the freedom to exist fully as ourselves without fear. Culture that teaches consent and autonomy early are a culture that prevents violence later. So tonight as we gather, let's commit ourselves not only to supporting survivors, but also dismantling the systems that allow violence to flourish. Let's commit to building a culture where all bodies are free from policing, where all genders are respected, and where every single person can live without fear.
We also spoke with Anissa Carrascal of the Canadian Mental Health Association and Veronica Pena of Huronia Transition Homes. The following includes interviews and highlights from the event.
Tonight we were here for Take Back the Night in Barrie. It is an international protest march to end sexual violence against women, girls, and gender diverse people. The third Thursday of every September, sexual assault centers and communities across Canada and internationally come together, take to the streets, and take back spaces where we don't normally feel safe as women and as gender diverse individuals. We always try to be super intentional with having different individuals come and speak, and it's always hard because you could probably have 20 different organizations or community activists, but we wanted to start with the international context. We had Simcoe for Palestine start us off. We know that rape is used as a weapon of war, and we know with the genocide that's happening right now in Palestine that that is occurring. And you heard the speaker tonight talk about that so passionately, about the reproductive rights of women not being respected through this genocide, and also the use of rape and sexual violence against women. And so we started that international context, then we got more local. The Gilbert Centre, Sarah really spoke to gender-based violence, the extreme numbers of differential rates of violence against trans individuals in our community and across the world. And then Kelly Redmond spoke on behalf of, or read the speech from Megan Chambers at Elizabeth Fry Society to really talk about the experiences of violence and sexual violence from women who are unhoused or living in poverty. And then we kind of closed it as the regional sexual assault center, really bringing it close to home, talking about the realities in our communities, talking about the really enormous impact of Hockey Canada trial, and then making some calls to action to the city of Barrie. If anybody needs support, if anybody has survived violence or has experienced gender-based violence, we have a 24/7 crisis line available to take your call. We are here for you. And so we have the countywide sexual assault center available to you. There are multiple organizations that were here today. We have different women's shelters that are available. The Gilbert Centre provides different supports as well. The Elizabeth Fry Society as well provides supports. So I would recommend to folks to really look at 211, and then there's an area for abuse services, and all of that information comes up there. And yeah, we're right now looking at a proposed cut to the Women and Gender Equality, the federal ministry, where they're looking at cutting 80% of the federal budget over the next 3 years. That is significant. And so we're always advocating for not only no cuts to happen, but for that funding to be stabilized and for it to be increased. But agencies like ours, we receive most of our funding from the provincial government, and we're asking for increased investment in your local sexual assault centers, in your local shelters, and in your responses that are specialized for gender-based violence.
We are a non-profit organization. We work in the Simcoe County, and our main goal is to support the women who are victims of violence or abuse. We run 5 programs. We have 2 shelter houses, the Rosewood House and Aquarius House. We have Operation Grow, is the social enterprise, Choice for Children to support their kids, and Athena's is the sexual assault center and advocacy center. Our main goal, as I mentioned to you, is to support the women who are victims of violence or abuse, and to be one of the loud voices in the community to stop the violence against women. It's so sad right now, some government resources are taken away, and nobody knows the huge impact that the violence has in the lives, in the communities, and in the countries. And that's why we have this night, Take Back the Night, to raise our voice, to invite everybody to be part of this movement to stop the violence, and to be part of this movement to really understand the huge impact that the violence against women has in the communities and in the countries as well. Right now we have 20 women and their children in the Rosewood House. We used to have 5 women in the Aquarius House. Actually, the Aquarius House is the program to support the women who are victims of human trafficking. In Operation Grow, the social enterprise, we have around 200 members. In this place, we run workshops. We have a vertical farm as well. This is a social enterprise, actually, to support the women to get skills, to find jobs, to get more skills, to improve their lives in general. In the SAC Center, we have around 200 women, I think so, around. And in the Choice for Children, similar number. Yeah, we need the resources as much as possible, because unfortunately, we have a high piece of the violence, because sometimes we normalize the violence in our lives. And when you really understand what is happening in your life, in that moment you will start to say, okay, that is enough, and you start a pathway to change your life. That's why we have this high side, and right now we don't know exactly how many women are victims of violence, because some of them are keeping silence. But we know, and that's why we have these movements, to start to encourage the women to speak, and speak loud, to stop these violent situations in their lives. The first step, we truly believe, is to try to connect with us. Try to connect with one of the resources that you have in the community, and little steps, because sometimes you think that, oh no, if I stop this situation, suddenly what happened in my life? And that is not the reality. This is a pathway. This is a little steps. And each woman is different. Each life is different. That's why we have a lot of resources around the organization to support the women to start this pathway. To say, okay, maybe some women, they need to stop the situation one day and done. Sometimes take time. Sometimes needs to navigating little steps. That's why we have all these resources in the organization to support you, to start this pathway with us, because you are not alone. One of the main issues that the women have is the feeling about, I am guilty, I am not enough, it's my fault, and the shame and the isolation. That's why we have all these resources around the organization to support the women in this pathway. Little steps, day by day, but finally you can get the goal to stop the violence in your life. That's why we are here. www.huroniatransitionhomes.n.ca, and the crisis line is 705-526-3221. We have a 24-hour, 7 days week service. And we are more than happy to connect with you. And it is important to mention that in the Rosewood House, we have a space for the pets as well. We have a shelter for dogs and cats. And this is something really, really important because sometimes the women struggle a lot, okay, what I need to do with my pet, with my part of my family, and more than welcome, and we have the space.
Well, it is Take Back the Night, which is a movement that started in the early 80s as a way to, it was basically a movement that started from college women that were kind of sick and tired of being attacked and sexually assaulted in campuses all over the United States, in North America in general. And it became a much bigger movement after that. So we, the Simcoe County Health Coalition, participates every year on Take Back the Night because there is an intersectionality in between providing good healthcare and servicing women. It is well known that the more we give women, the more it comes back to our communities. And we need to kind of really take seriously the mental health toll of sexual assault, and that it takes ripples around our healthcare system. It costs us much more to have women in shelter than to properly house them. It costs us much more to have them taken by the police or evicted from tent cities than to actually provide the services that they need. Because in many cases, people, especially single moms, end up homeless because of domestic partner violence and sexual abuse. So the Simcoe County Health Coalition always has and always will be behind healthcare for women. And this is one of the best examples of how can we actually make things happen in our communities. This is also one of my favorite events of the year. I always say that to everybody because of how many people come together and how many community organizations share so many things and get to know each other and the causes that we're fighting for. So it's not just a Take Back the Night, but it ends up being a little bit of a networking situation, but it's really wholesome and organic. And I love that for our community because it has come and brought a lot of people together to kind of, for an excellent cause. So yeah, I really enjoy the time that I have with all this female power. It's very empowering to see so many people actually caring and doing something about it. Well, as you can see, we have several organizations in Barrie. We have the Athena Sexual Assault Counseling and Advocacy Center that is one of the organizers of this event. There's also, CMHA also has a crisis line that can connect people and refer people to services around the city. We have specific centers that were present today that service women from indigenous background. There are plenty of options to kind of get services in the city. And as one of our wonderful speakers was telling us today, it's kind of all at risk right now because the federal government is pulling funding from the Ministry of Women and Indigenous Affairs, and that is very regrettable because all of these initiatives actually work with funding from the government in the provincial and federal level. And if we don't have that funding, we will see more moms, single moms on the streets because there are no other options for them. So it is very important that that message comes across, that we need to fight to not just take back the night, but take back the budget.
Good evening and welcome to Take Back the Night. Tonight is more than a march, it's a movement. Survivors, allies, families, and communities coming together to demand change. We march to honor silenced voices, to reclaim safety, freedom, and the right to live without fear. Each step is an act of resistance, courage, and solidarity. Together we declare, our bodies are our own, our voices are strong, and we take back the night. Bonsoir et bienvenue à Reprenons la nuit. Ce soir, ce n'est pas seulement une marche, c'est un mouvement. Survivantes, alliés, familles et communautés se rassemblent pour exiger le changement. Nous marchons pour honorer les voix réduites au silence, pour reprendre la sécurité, la liberté et le droit de vivre sans peur. Chaque pas est un acte de résistance, de courage et de solidarité. Ensemble, nous affirmons, nos corps nous appartiennent, nos voix sont fortes et nous reprenons la nuit. We acknowledge that we gather today on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people, including the Ojibwe, Ottawa, and Potawatomi nations of the Three Fires Confederacy. This land is also home to the Huron-Wendat and the Haudenosaunee and continues to be shared today with many Métis and Inuit families. These lands were taken from Indigenous peoples who have nurtured and protected them for countless generations, caring for the health of the earth and sharing its resources with respect and reciprocity. Their teachings remind us of the importance of community, care, and responsibility for all living beings. As we come together for Take Back the Night, we also recognize that displacement continues, reminding us that too many in our communities do not have a safe home. From Indigenous teachings, we can learn what it means to live in right relationship with the land, with one another, and with those most impacted by displacement. May this acknowledgement guide us towards reflection, solidarity, and true reconciliation. Nous reconnaissons que nous nous réunissons aujourd'hui sur le territoire traditionnel des Anishinaabe, y compris les Ojibwe, les Ottawa et les Potawatomi de la Confédération des Trois-Feux. Ce territoire est aussi celui des Huron-Wendat et des Haudenosaunee, et il est toujours partagé avec de nombreuses familles métisses et inuites. Ces terres volées aux peuples autochtones ont pourtant été protégées et respectées par eux pendant d'innombrables générations. Leurs enseignements nous rappellent l'importance du respect, du soin et de la responsabilité envers la terre et envers tous les êtres vivants. Alors que nous nous rassemblons pour Reprenons la nuit, nous reconnaissons que le déplacement continue et que trop de personnes dans notre communauté n'ont pas du foyer sûr. Des enseignements autochtones, nous apprenons ce que signifie vivre en juste relation avec la terre, entre nous et avec celles et ceux les plus touchés par le déplacement. Que cette reconnaissance nous guide vers la réflexion, la solidarité et une réconciliation véritable. Thank you. Merci.
Welcome, everybody, to Take Back the Night. Thank you, Chantel. I want to just thank everybody for coming today. I'd like to thank all the community organizations, not just for coming today, but all of the amazing work that you do all the time and then carving these moments out. Thank you. We know that in order to have people attend events, it is so important not all of us have access to food. So I'd like to thank the folks that donated that to us today to bring that here. I'd like to thank Grounded Coffee Company, all the way from Midland, who gave us a bunch of coffee today. Lori from Around My Gluten-Free Table, who made sure that folks with dietary needs are looked after. I'd like to thank our farm, our beautiful farm in Midland that hydroponically grew all those salads for you. And all of those vegan dressings with them. And I'd also like to thank the folks who, as much as my voice is loud, it's never loud enough, so who gave us all the audio-visual stuff today at Michael Enterprise Audio and Visual. So thanks to everybody. We have a few speakers tonight at our rally, and then we are going to take to the streets. But I have the privilege of introducing Susan Salam, a community activist, a Palestinian woman, and a member of Simcoe for Palestine, who is going to start us off today. So welcome, Susan.
Hi everybody, hello. And thank you for being here. Thank you for the organizers for inviting us and giving me the chance to talk to you. Thank you for giving my voice a podium to be heard. I am Palestinian. I was born in Gaza. My family is still there. Their voices cannot be heard, so I'm speaking on their behalf. As a Canadian Palestinian woman born in a refugee camp in Gaza, where my grandparents and parents were displaced to after their home and land were stolen, and they were forcibly put in refugee camps in Gaza, and they lived there with no right of return to their homes. To be displaced again now, another for the 100 times, they lost even the refugee homes that they had. I am very privileged and acknowledge my privilege to be a Canadian citizen, to be a Canadian, and my kids are safe and have the rights and freedoms that guaranteed to us by the Charter of Freedoms, Rights and Freedoms that is impeded in our Constitution. For that, I'm so grateful. That's a right that my family, my cousins, aunts, uncles do not have. I know this is a night about women, and I appreciate everything that everybody is doing to keep us safe. We keep us safe. But I will have to start with acknowledging the elephant in the room, the elephant in every room that have been ignored for 11 months. Yes, it is genocide. What's happening in Gaza is genocide. Now we can say it because a declaration by the United Nations said, yes, it is a genocide. We've seen it. We've been hearing it day in, day out for 11 months. In this declaration from the United Nations, and a UN Independent International Commission of Inquiry reported that determination that Israel is responsible for the commission of genocide in Gaza. The report confirmed the mass deliberate killing of Palestinian civilians, including women and children. Majority of them are women and children. The official estimate of murdered people in Gaza is 60,000 people. More than 55% of them are women and children. Not that men don't count, innocent men count. This estimate is an underestimate because there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people are still under the rubble. Nobody can reach them. The total tally will one day come out. Israel has and continues to impose deliberate starvation of all Palestinians in Gaza. Daily bombardment compromise access to means of survival. Since the declaration of the United States, the Israeli military have escalated their attack and declared and ordered evacuation of all of the northern Gaza, which is the city of Gaza. And we would expect more devastating news coming in the next few days. In addition, over the last 2 years, Israeli military has systematically destroyed healthcare and education facilities. Reports from last year has counted for more than 88% of all schools in Gaza have been destroyed, and the remaining schools are used as shelters for displaced people. All universities and colleges in Gaza have been destroyed. There have been more than 32 hospitals in Gaza. None are fully functioning. More than 50% of the clinics and field hospitals are partially functioning or non-functioning. Since we are mainly concerned today with Palestinian women in general, I'm just going to report to you some of the reports that have been acknowledged concerning women. To start with, women's reproductive justice is rooted in human rights charter that maintains the right to maintain personal autonomy on women's bodies, to choose to have or not to have children, to parent children in safe and sustainable and safe communities. Palestinian women under Israeli military occupation and siege for more than 8 decades have been denied the right to safety and access to health care in all the occupied territories. What's happening in Gaza is an escalation beyond imagination of anybody, but this is not recent. This did not happen in October 2023. This has been going on since 1948. Since the escalation of the more recent events, there has been a senior human rights investigator report to UN Human Rights Council that concluded that sexual and gender-based violence by Israeli security forces against Palestinians, including children, has been used as a method of war, including forced public stripping, nudity, sexual harassment, including rape and threats of rape, as well as sexual assault of all sorts. These measures have intensified over the last months, with ample evidence that they brag about. We see it everywhere. And there have been international investigation into this, and there have been unnumbered reports of it. Again, I will just have to conclude my speech, and I appreciate you all, and I thank you all for giving me the chance to speak to you. From my heart, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. and thank you for being here. My name is Sarah Tilley. I use they, them, and she, her pronouns, and I'm the Harm Reduction Program Manager at the Gilbert Centre. It's an honor to be here with you tonight as we gather for this important annual event. Take Back the Night has always been about shining a light into the dark corners where violence thrives. It's about believing survivors, demanding change, and building communities where every person is safe. In order to do that, I want us to look closely at the violence trans people face. Because when we speak about sexual violence, we cannot ignore the reality that trans communities, especially trans women and trans people of color, carry a disproportionate burden of harm. According to Statistics Canada, nearly 6 in 10 transgender people in Canada have experienced some form of violent victimization since the age of 15. That's almost double the rate of cisgender Canadians. And when it comes to sexual assault specifically, about 1 in 4 trans people report being assaulted. These numbers are not abstract. They represent people we know, our friends, our family, our neighbors, our community. And we must ask, why is this happening? The answer is simple, it's patriarchy. Patriarchy is a system that insists that gender must fit into rigid boxes, that some bodies are worth more than others, and that power belongs to those who can dominate. Patriarchy fuels sexual violence by teaching entitlement to others' bodies, and patriarchy fuels transphobia because trans people, by existing outside of those rigid rules, expose just how false and fragile they really are. That's why attempts to police people's bodies are not just harmful, they are violent. Whether it's laws that restrict gender expression, barriers to gender-affirming healthcare, or denying children the right to explore their identities. These are all forms of control over people's most intimate selves. To dictate who someone can be, how they must look, or what they can call themselves is another kind of assault on bodily autonomy, and we need to name that as violence. But if patriarchy and policing of gender are part of this problem, then what can we do and what is the solution? One powerful way to fight this is by teaching about consent and bodily autonomy from the very beginning. Promoting consent in childhood protects everyone. When children grow up learning that their bodies belong to them, they're less vulnerable to manipulation, exploitation, and abuse. When they see adults model respect for boundaries, things as simple as asking for a hug and respecting their choices when it comes to their bodies, they internalize that respect as non-negotiable. This is especially important when it comes to trans kids. Protecting children means protecting all children. Trans and gender diverse youth and children must also be included. When we teach bodily autonomy, it means listening to kids when they tell us who they are. It means defending their right to explore their identity without fear or punishment. It means making sure they know their bodies and their lives belong to them. Protecting kids does not mean silencing them, disciplining them into conformity, or deciding for them who they should be. Protecting kids means teaching them that their bodies are their own, that their boundaries will be respected, and that their voices matter. And this early learning doesn't just protect children in the moment, it reshapes our culture. Those children grow into adults who understand that consent is not just about sex, but about every interaction we have with one another. Adults who value autonomy create communities where abuse has no safe harbor, where respect is the default, and where violence cannot thrive. If we're serious about ending sexual violence, we must be serious about ending the violence of control, the policing of gender, of sexuality, and of identity. Because consent and autonomy are not just about sex, they're about life. They're about the freedom to exist fully as ourselves without fear. Culture that teaches consent and autonomy early are a culture that prevents violence later. So tonight as we gather, let's commit ourselves not only to supporting survivors, but also dismantling the systems that allow violence to flourish. Let's commit to building a culture where all bodies are free from policing, where all genders are respected, and where every single person can live without fear. Because safety is not conditional. And dignity is not conditional. Autonomy is not conditional. Together, we can take back the night, and together, we can take back our right to live freely, fully, and safely in our bodies.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Okay, next I'd like to call up Kelly Redmond. Kelly Redmond is the program supervisor of the Countywide Sexual Assault Center, Athenas, and is also a member of the Elizabeth Fry Society of Simcoe Muskoka's Board of Directors. Thank you, Kelly.
Good evening, everyone. It is very powerful for me to be here tonight at Take Back the Night. I am reading a speech from Megan Chambers, who is the executive director of Elizabeth Fry, and I am on the board there. This is where we need to remind ourselves and our city that every woman, girl, and gender diverse person deserves to walk and exist safely in our communities, free from fear, free from harassment, and free from violence. When we talk about gender-based violence, we can't separate it from poverty and homelessness. Poverty creates vulnerability. It limits choices, and for women, it too often traps them in unsafe situations. Women who are unhoused experience violence at much higher rates, assault, exploitation, harassment, simply because they don't have a safe place to go. Here in Barrie, encampments have been being dismantled, and women have been being further displaced. When their few belongings are taken, when tents are torn down, and temporary motel rooms are offered, but no long-term stability is provided, they're pushed even deeper into danger. Of the 45 people evicted last week in the encampment sweep here in Barrie, 19 were women. These are our sisters. These are women in our community who are already surviving violence, poverty, and homelessness. And instead of safety, they were met with forced displacement and the loss of what little stability and community that they had. We cannot look away from their reality because this struggle is our collective responsibility. This is not a path to safety. This is not a solution to homelessness. We must be clear about the systemic causes. Violence itself is a leading driver of women's homelessness. Across Canada, nearly half of the women who are unhoused have experienced violence, and over 70% have faced sexual or physical violence in their lifetimes. Without affordable housing and adequate income supports, women are often forced into impossible circumstances to survive. Here in Simcoe County, the number of women experiencing homelessness is growing at a much higher rate than that of men. The number of single mom households experiencing homelessness has almost tripled in the past year. Indigenous women face these realities even more acutely. They are 3 times more likely to experience violence than non-Indigenous women, and they are dramatically overrepresented in homeless populations. This is not accidental. It is a result of colonization, systemic racism, and a lack of safe housing options. Now compare that to what we know works. Housing with supports costs far less in the long run than keeping people trapped in shelters, hospitals, jails, or cycles of policing. Studies show housing first programs, which provide both housing and supports, can reduce health, justice, and social service costs by 40 to 70%. But more importantly, housing gives women the stability and dignity they need to escape violence and rebuild their lives. So let's be clear, affordable housing is violence prevention. Basic income is Basic income is also violence prevention. Stable long-term housing is far less costly than shelter beds, emergency services, or encampment evictions. And most importantly, it saves lives. Tonight, as we take back the night, Let's also take back the narrative. Homelessness is not inevitable. Poverty is not inevitable. Gender-based violence is not inevitable. These are exacerbated by policy choices. Together we can demand different choices that keep people safe, supported, and housed. We can't continue to have a system where women fleeing violence end up worse off than they were before. Let's change that. Let's raise our voices and remind Barrie and Simcoe County that people deserve more than just survival. We all deserve safety, dignity, and freedom. Not someday, but now. Yeah.
Thank you, Kelly. I want to thank all of the speakers tonight and end with a few words myself. Tonight is really special. Not only is it a Take Back the Night march here in Barrie, but it is part of a bigger movement. In 2022, the Government of Canada announced a national action plan on gender-based violence. I remember at Take Back the Night, we celebrated that. I think every event I've been to thereafter, that was something that was celebrated, a national action plan on gender-based violence. Well, today, we are facing 2 years later, or 3 years later, a proposed cut of 80% to the very ministry that was tasked with women and gender equality federally. Tonight, sexual assault centers across Ontario are not only marching at Take Back the Nights in their communities, many of them have postponed their events and are in Ottawa today. They are marching to take back the budget. Yeah. They are on Parliament Hill, and when they march to get to Parliament Hill, sexual assault centers from Ontario and Quebec will be symbolically linking arms in front of Parliament, forming a wall to ask to take back the budget as we take back the night. How can this be happening? When government slash funding to ministries responsible for equity, safety, and justice, it sends a message that survivors' voices don't matter. It tells women, girls, and gender diverse people that their safety is negotiable, that accountability and healing are optional, and they are only meant to be talked about in reports. And when we ask how we can tolerate the minimization of this in practice, it doesn't take long for us to see how it's playing out. We just have to look at what happened this summer with the Hockey Canada trials. We saw the voices of survivors minimized. We saw rape myths present in a courtroom and then in a 6-hour verdict from a judge. On July 23rd, sexual assault centers, including ours, went to London, Ontario. We thought we were going for a protest. It was one of the most somber places I've ever been to. Because in that space, many of us had expected a non-guilty verdict for the 5 world junior hockey players. It was something we had prepared ourselves for. What we hadn't prepared ourselves for was a 6-hour verdict of rape myths and victim blaming, and the judge declaring that believing women has no place in the legal system. Once again, the trial and the verdict showed us that survivors are the ones that are put on trial, not the perpetrators of violence. The judge stated that EM, the woman whose name was redacted because of a publication ban, was found not to be credible or reliable witness. What does that even mean? Each person responds to violence in a different way. Our bodies respond in different ways. Survivors cannot be discredited for the very ways our bodies have protected us. We deserve better. We deserve a system that listens to survivors, that centers dignity and safety above all else. Until then, our legal system will remain a place where survivors are re-traumatized rather than protected. No wonder sexual assault has the lowest reporting rate out of any violent crime in Canada. To the survivors in this room, I want you to know that we see you. I want you to know that we believe you, and I want you to know that 24/7 we have crisis lines available to talk to you, to tell you that. You deserve better, we deserve better. And to EM, thank you for your courage. We see you and we believe you, and you truly started a movement, and the experiences of so many survivors need to help fuel this movement. The somber nature of going to London was the fear that this verdict would silence others, and we cannot let that happen. The budget cuts to the Federal Ministry of Women and Gender Equality and the Hockey Canada trials are not the same story, but they rhyme. Both show us that when those in power treat sexual violence as an afterthought, survivors carry the heaviest burdens while institutions walk away unscathed. And here in Barrie and Simcoe County, when encampments are torn down, women and gender diverse people are pushed into unsafe spaces. Violence rises. Single mothers facing homelessness in our region, as Kelly said, have nearly tripled in the last 12 months. That's data from today on the County of Simcoe website. Everything is gendered, including housing and poverty. We know so many individuals come into the shelter, and when there's no adequate housing to go, they go back into unsafe homes. It is the same if somebody finds safety within an encampment. So what do we need? There are many levels to this. We need the federal government to maintain and actually increase funding into the women and gender equality place and not cut it. Ministry, not place. We also need the national action plan to include sexual violence. That was a glaring omission. We need the province to declare intimate partner violence an epidemic. We are told this declaration is not happening because too few of us are asking for it. So when a politician knocks on your door, or you have the opportunity to talk to somebody who's a member of provincial parliament, bring this up. They will hear you. I hope if enough of us say it. We need proper funding for programs that support women and gender diverse survivors so that organizations are not kept in survival mode. We need to create alternatives to the legal system so that it can become a justice system and actually support survivors to experience justice. We need to recognize that survivors have unique health needs and invest in that specialized care and not ignore those gender differences within our provincial strategies with the Ministry of Health. And we need to set social assistance rates that do not hold people in poverty and actually endorse a guaranteed basic income. And in our community, in Simcoe County, we've only had one municipality declare intimate partner violence an epidemic, and that's actually here in the city of Barrie. They did that in December. That's a huge step. We need that declaration from all of our municipalities. Where are they? Why hasn't this happened? We need every municipality to also include gender-based violence in the center of their community safety and well-being plans. Those are being completely rewritten right now. They've come to the end. Your feedback is so crucial to that, so that that is included, and it's a pillar in itself. We're investing in deeply affordable housing, but if we are not also investing in the supports that are required around that, people continue to be evicted. We have to invest in deeply affordable, supportive housing that includes safe supply and safe consumption sites. And I just want to end tonight, because I know you've been listening to us a lot, and I just want to say we need all of you. We need all of you to continue to be outraged by the Hockey Canada trials. We need you to be outraged by the femicides that continue to happen in the county of Simcoe and across Ontario. Be outraged by the attack of people living in poverty. It is only through community that we actually can take back the night, that we can take back the budget, and that we can truly take back our power. So thank you all so much for coming tonight, and let's do exactly that. And I was supposed to actually tell you something, not just what I wanted to say. A few quick things. We will go outside, we will start the march from there, and there is a sign outside that says, "We believe survivors." Please add your voice to that. We are going to put it up in our sexual assault center. So please send your message to the survivors in our community. We will meet outside. I also just cannot forget to say a huge thank you to all of the folks in my organization. I see like 15 to 20 of them here tonight who have done so much work to make this happen, who do so much work to uphold the voice of the survivors in our community. Thank you. With that, and a huge shout out to Hannah, we will go outside and we will meet there and begin our march. Thank you all for coming.